How can copywriters or marketers help their favorite charities raise hundreds of thousands of dollars in the next year? Hi, this is Justin Hitt with Ad Briefing's Copywriting Tips. Now, it's going to be a tough year for charities in 2021 and 2022. Now, 2021 is about over, so they don't have much time. They kind of have this holiday rush in order to get their charitable contributions, but it isn't going to likely happen if they haven't done these things that you can help them with. Now, 2022 may be even worse because we still have the COVID issues, but ultimately, it doesn't matter if it's the 2008 stock market crash and mortgage crisis or it's COVID. This system works for helping your clients raise tremendous amounts of money for their worthy charity. Now, first off, you want to make sure the charity is actually worthy. There's a lot of big charities that you could work for, and they love to spend money on copywriters, but I personally don't think that's a good effort because very often the smaller foundations and charitable organizations are much more fun to work with. But don't get me wrong, if a big charity comes along and they want to pay you as a copywriter to write materials for them, here's what we need to do. First off, you need to make sure that the charitable materials that you create are advocating the cause of the charitable organization. And the reason we do this is because we want to make sure the charity can write most of this off as fundraising or advocacy work. It's going to make their bottom line look better. Now, I didn't tell you up front that I was going to give you some insider information that the charity is going to want to do in order to make sure that what you're doing shows up not as fundraising, but as actual charitable work. But again, this is the reality of this market. A lot of copywriters won't tell you about that stuff, but you've got to understand this. Again, this is why I'd rather work for a smaller foundation, a private foundation, a charitable group, a historical society, or such. But listen carefully. If you've got an organization that doesn't have a large system in place, they aren't scheming to make things look right because they have big executive salaries, and they sincerely do quality work helping people, raising them up, making people sustainable rather than dependent on fundraising campaigns, then this is very powerful. The prospect newsletter. Any charitable organization that has a donor base, the newsletter can be an excellent point of leverage in order to get additional contributions. Now, here's what's important about this newsletter. It really depends on the audience, but you're going to include in the newsletter tax strategies for the contributor. So you might make them aware of a charitable trust foundation where they can take the tax deduction today and they can give the money later. It's a very valuable way for charities to know that they have some money coming down the line, even though they don't have it in their bank account today. You would partner with a CPA or an accountant who already talks about this topic, and then you would write it up in such a way so it sounds very friendly as an option for individuals who want to help this organization but don't want to necessarily give up money today. You would have advocacy materials. Their newsletter would talk about success stories with the families they helped. So, for example, if you have a charity that builds homes or affordable housing, you want to talk about the family who couldn't afford a home but now can afford the home due to the generous donations of those receiving the newsletter. See, we always want to play it back not to the success of the organization, and you're going to have some arguments with the founding people or the people who hire you in the organization, but they need to understand if the person sees their success in the donation, then when they give the donation, they have a psychological payoff for giving the money. Now, if you're looking for volunteers, it's something different. If they go and volunteer a few hours at an organized event, they have the psychological payoff that they've contributed. And that leads me to the next thing that needs to be in the newsletter. And these are almost like a checklist, but you need some kind of thank you for the volunteers. If you want volunteers, you have to show your appreciation to the volunteers and thank them by name if possible. But you might even have a sheet that says this month's volunteers, and you have all the volunteers' names in it. Now, the reason we're doing this again is we want to reward the volunteers. We want to reward the contributors. Might even think about having $1 million club, individuals that contribute to the $1 million fundraising activity. Now, there's something interesting in that because, again, we're talking about psychological benefits, a showing of appreciation. We're teaching the audience that they can get something just by donating. The Millionaire Club is a really interesting element that you can put in your newsletter, and it's a $1 million campaign. So there's an organization I contribute to. They have a historic building in Washington, D.C., and it's a historical foundation, and they have a $1 million club. And that $1 million club are the people who that year contributed to their $1 million target campaign for building restoration. Now, they have target campaigns for other things, but this one, they try to raise $1 million a year in order to fund this property. Now, it doesn't mean I gave them $1 million, but because the campaign was successful, I was recognized for contributing towards that specific element. So somebody might see the $1 million round table or the $1 million club, and they say, well, I don't have $1 million to donate, but maybe for $1,000 or some minimum donation, they can get on that list and gain that recognition. Now, that's actually tied to a physical plaque in the building. So you want to make sure you're featuring the physical element. The reason people give, one of the reasons, is to be immortalized. So there's a private school that I've worked with, and they ultimately have on the hallway the different donation levels. So they have folks that donated $100,000, folks that donated $50,000, folks that donated $25,000, and people who donated $1,500. Now, if you look at this chart, there's different brackets. And as people contribute, they can be in different brackets. Some people are in all the brackets. But again, it's a visual representation. You want to put that in the newsletter and tell people about this. Why is it so important that we recognize our $100,000 contributors? And you're going to have a couple anonymous on there, which is okay. The reason why we recognize these individuals is because they're the backbone of our program here. They make sure that we can help X number of people a year, in addition to all the other contributors, which we appreciate at any contribution level. These folks are very special because they make possible the initiatives that we all benefit from. Do you see that language? You're not excluding the $1 contributor. You're saying, hey, you're important too, but these people are immortalized in our building, and 25 years from now, folks will know that how important they were. And see, we're giving them immortality in a sense. And that's why, people get names on buildings and stuff. Now, that plaque only has a few names on it. You don't build a plaque with 50 slots on it because you may not get $50,000, $100,000 contributors, but you might have a certain family foundation, or you might have a will or trust. Now, again, that opens the door to an article later is how do these people get on the $100,000 contributors? Because $100,000 seems like a lot of money. And then you talk about your estate contributions or different types of contributions that are there. You're essentially educating your prospect or your potential donor how they might be able to get these benefits. Now, you want them to have benefits in real life. So, for example, if you have a quarterly dinner that honors sponsors and describes success stories, then you want to make sure you're talking about that and why it's important to attend. If you can attend the gala this year, why is it so important? Here's what you're going to get. Now, when you talk about what they get, you don't talk about that they get to give you money or they get to give your client money. You talk about their opportunity to meet people, the opportunity to rub shoulders, the opportunity for fun and entertainment, the opportunity to celebrate the advocacy that you're doing. So the prospect newsletter, you have to ask the client if they've got one first, because you can get a contract to rewrite their existing prospect newsletter. You can get an opportunity to help them start a prospect newsletter. You can take their list of donors. So you want to help them with list management. You get a list of their donors and you take it to a list data service and you find different mailing lists that those donors are also on, so that now you can help them write a fundraising letter. Now, there's a couple different types of fundraising letters. There's the fundraising letter that introduces what you do, that usually goes to somebody who's never heard of you before, but is closely related or qualified as an existing donor. So, for example, if you've got a trade association and you're raising funds for their annual benefit, Maybe it's an insurance program or something for members who have lost a spouse in the fraternity or for the trade association. You're going to go look at people who are members of your organization, but more importantly, those who are members who have contributed to that specific program. Then you might introduce others who are in the same trade or with the same demographics, that these types of people join the organization. Once they've joined the organization or given a small donation, then you have another type of letter, which is a donor lift letter. So the donor has contributed in the past, and now you're going to ask them for more money. Now, one thing you might notice in the trade world is that, in the world of fundraising, is that those letters very often have a contribute $50, $100, or $150. That is actually a sliding range that's adjusted by a mail merge. So if their average contribution tends to be $150, it might say donate $150, $250, or $350. There's a mathematical formula there, and you can help educate your nonprofit, foundation, advocacy group. You can educate them about that possibility, because they might say to you, well, I don't want to send a letter out to my donors. First off, they're probably going to say, I don't want to send 3 letters. I don't want to send a letter to people who've never heard of us. I don't want to send a letter to first-time contributors. I don't want to send a letter to repeat contributors. I want to send one letter. Well, you can actually use mail merge in order to make that one letter customized. And so folks that typically give $5 a year, they're going to get a letter that bumps them up to $20 a year. And those who typically give $50 a year are going to get bumped up to $100 a year. But again, as a marketer, as a copywriter, you probably understand that we can do some triage. So if you have typically low contributors, you might want to send email to bump them up. You might want to send a special package once a year instead of something every month. But again, you go back to the prospect newsletter, that's every month. I always get the question about email versus print. If you're going to do a prospect newsletter, you want to send it by mail. Now, here's why. First off, your prospect newsletter is going to go to individuals who can donate to your organization. Maybe they have a relationship with you in the past. It's going to go to individuals who are potential to donate to the organization to make them aware of what you're doing. You're going to send it to your high rollers as well, those who are constant contributors and heavy supporters. However, you're going to make it some kind of resource that and this is the way I think about it. I know it's a little crude, that it's so interesting that they'd want to sit on the toilet and read it. See, I used to send a prospect newsletter when I was selling, and I would send this prospect newsletter to fleet managers and businesses with multiple vehicles, because I was selling fleet fuel. That newsletter, when I go to the business and I use their bathroom for some reason, I would see that newsletter in the bathroom. Sometimes I'd see 2 or 3 of those newsletters in the bathroom. And that's because those things that I mentioned earlier that should be in the newsletter, that checklist, all around that is wrapped with trivia, puzzles, entertainment, fun facts, celebrity birthdays, all these other elements that make the newsletter that time gap filler. So the newsletter goes to a business owner. The business owner takes it into the office and puts it in the waiting room. And people pick it up, and they have these happy stories about the successes of the charity. They have this recognition of contributors. They have these other games and puzzles and things to do that make the newsletter something that you're going to return to time and time again. Now, if you send a letter out, there are 2 kinds of letters. There's one that directly solicits a donation, and then there's another kind of letter that gives a reason why you might want to pass along a gift. So now Heifer International has done this a couple times, and I know I'm trying not to name the charities here, but ultimately Heifer International sends out a little booklet. It's a literal catalog of the different levels of contribution you can make. Are you going to buy a pig and they're going to send it to Philippines? Are you going to buy a cow and they're going to send it to India? They're not actually sending a cow to India. They're not sending, a pig to a Polynesian country. They go and put it on a little boat and no. But it feels like I'm choosing from a catalog, but inside that catalog are very inspirational success stories of individuals who have lifted themselves up from poverty, who have received a gift of a chicken and then passed it along. The narratives actually explain how their program works in the context of the successes of their beneficiaries. So you feel like you're buying a gift for somebody. Well, you could send a letter that has advocacy material. So it's a lead generation piece that drives the individual to advocacy materials. So for example, hey, you know a lot about our charity and how we help X, Y, and Z, but there's probably somebody in your group who wants to do the same good that you do, but doesn't yet know about who we are. If you'll pass along, and there's like an enclosure, if you pass along this enclosure, it'll give them an opportunity to get a free booklet that describes why it's so important to do something. So why is it so important to fight human trafficking? Why is it so important to build affordable homes? Can you see what this is doing? It's the same thing we do in the marketing world. It's essentially giving that individual an easy way to refer. It doesn't put them on the spot, but it offers a gift through a lead generation piece that helps expand your list. That person who jumps on your list, the booklet gets sent to them, and then ultimately that prospect newsletter goes on the back end. Now, before I wrap this up, you might be saying, well, Justin, a lot of the mid-sized charities don't have the resources to execute a marketing campaign, and they don't have the money to pay for it. Again, this is why I'm advocating raising hundreds of thousands of dollars. This is why I'm advocating $1 million fundraising activities or funds where you're raising a large sum of money. This is because it is expensive to raise money. All the same metrics matter. For every dollar spent on fundraising or overhead activity, how many dollars are we able to raise for the advocacy material? You have a legal requirement. Now, what I'm going to say is that you can help the nonprofits do this. If you had a portfolio of 3 to 5 nonprofits and you were working with a mailing shop, that's how you get the physical letters out the mail. If you were helping them set up some kind of marketing automation or some kind of platform that helps them with their receipts of contributions, that's wonderful. If you were writing copy and showing them how to recycle their marketing, you could take their last 12 months of promotions and write a next 12 months of promotions. So they don't have to keep coming back to a copywriter or keep looking for a marketer. They can simply just put the next thing in the mail. You make it real easy for them. You can help them understand why it's important not to stuff this stuff in-house and try to use volunteers to pack this, because it's a very precise activity. I wrote a brochure for an organization out of Virginia Beach a while back, and we focused this brochure on the key advocacy points, why the programs work, and examples of them working. And then on the very last page, there's maybe 2 paragraphs about how you can contribute. That brochure went as a ride-along in an envelope going with a letter. That brochure was available in their lobby. That brochure was available in their partners' lobbies. So they had a lot of contributors who were at a partner level, and they were doctors and lawyers, so it goes in their lobby. That brochure went into their newsletter. That brochure later was recycled, and I didn't have any part in the recycling, but they were very smart to recycle it into a kind of a booklet. So they added additional text and success stories, and they used it in a booklet. The money they paid me was minuscule to the amount of money that they were able to raise for a worthy cause. Again, the worthy cause part is important, because they're going to try to, they're going to say, well, we don't have any money to pay you. Well, let me show you how to raise the money to pay me. Well, we don't want to do a monthly newsletter. It's too much trouble for our office. Let me show you how my company can help you with marketing automation. Oh, we want to send an email because it's cheaper. Letters are too expensive. Let me show you some case studies about how letters physically in hand help anchor that emotional connection that a donor needs to be a repeat donor. All of these things matter. All of these things build the campaign. And as a copywriter or a marketer, you're in the right place. Now, again, don't let a nonprofit tell you they can't pay for fundraising. Fundraising is the blood of their organization. And if it's done right and they partner with the right marketers, then you may even help them spend more of their time and effort on the advocacy work and automate a lot of the back end when it comes to their marketing activities. There are CRM packages for nonprofits. There are mailing houses that can do incredible digital to print and just kind of send out these newsletters and support the list management. There's data services that can take lists of donors and show what mailing lists have additional donors, what magazines, what kind of demographics you're looking at. And you can be the powerful catalyst that makes this possible. I want to thank you for listening. I'm Justin Hitt with Ad Briefing's Copywriting Tips. And this has been about how you as a copywriter or a marketer can help worthy causes, charities, private foundations, historical societies, organizations that are doing good today when it's most needed. If you have any questions about what I've covered here, I can be reached at www.adbriefings.co.uk. I'm here to help copywriters, marketers, and business development professionals transform communications through words that sell into profits for your clients. Thanks for listening.